Good afternoon all. Today I'm going to look at this. It's a Lego Technic set. It's kind of known as the Barcode truck or the Barcode multi-set. This set was released in 1997, I've determined. I can't quite remember when I bought it, but the last time I remember playing with it was probably early 2000s. So it hasn't seen the light of day for quite a while. So here's the inside of the box, but there's some quite interesting stuff on the inside lid. Up here you've got the barcode sheet, which has a whole load of barcodes on it. And there's a barcode reader, which is also the motor controller and sensor detector. So that's presumably microprocessor controlled. And you can see from this image that it's a tipper truck, so the rear section tips up to tip out those wheels. Now at the front you've got this sensor, which is a little push button switch, and when the barcode truck drives up to something, one of these wheel things, it goes through a sequence where it grips it with the grippers, lifts it up and throws it into the back of the truck. I think the set is complete, even though there are some cutouts here that don't have things in them, but I think that's just because I couldn't remember what went in those. There's the motor, and here's the microprocessor controlled scanner controller unit, so that's there. There's a bag of wires and connectors there. There's also a bag here, which just has some bits in it, but it's a Farnell electronic components bag. Now, I'm not going to actually build this set, that would take several hours, but I think what I'll do is I'll take out the microcontroller unit and the barcode sheet, and the motor and the sensor and some wires, and just see if we can get that section to work, and then I might actually take apart that control unit. Right, so I've got those bits there that I need. Now, I found in the bottom of the box the barcode scanning sheet, so I've got that, and then there's a couple of manuals. I think this is the main build manual, it's pretty thick, and this I think is the programming manual for the various models that you can build. Right, on the bench now, and there's a bit of a problem, and I did have it in my mind, or in the back of my mind, that I might have done this, and that is that I left the batteries in, and of course they've leaked really badly. And there's corrosion everywhere. So have I completely written off this set? I don't know. Yeah, so these 6 batteries have been left in for, well, possibly, I don't know, 15 years or something. And there's a lot of corrosion there. I don't know whether this is alkaline or acid. I suppose it might be alkaline because they are alkaline batteries. But I think this is going to have eaten the metal contacts fairly badly, so I'm going to try and remove as much of this as I can. I probably need a screwdriver for that, but I don't really want to use, I might use my ceramic ones actually. Don't want to use a metal screwdriver because it'll probably start to eat the tip of that. So this stuff shouldn't eat ceramic, I don't think, should it? Oh, that's coming out as one piece, that's quite handy. But yeah, this is really utterly disgusting. And I've no idea what state the metal is going to be in, but this stuff often seems to just take the coating off the metal, the chrome plating or whatever it's plated with, but this is very crusty. That's pretty bad really. I'm not sure how easily those are going to come out. Perhaps I'll start pulling them out from the top. They all seem to have leaked at the bottom. Not sure whether there's a chemical reason for that. Yeah, these contacts are really bad. I mean, actually the thing they seem to have done mainly is rusted. So maybe water content of the batteries has caused these contacts to rust over the many years that this thing has had these, or had this liquid that's now almost turned solid sitting in it. So possibly in order to get this working, it's a real shame because this is a really nice Lego set, quite a collector's item. Right, well, corroded terminals aside, I can see 3 screws there, so it might be a good idea to take the front off. I was just having a look at the front. There's a record button here, left and right, play and stop. But there are also these 2 white things. They're probably LEDs, actually. Yeah, they probably light up when you're doing a barcode record. And this is the sort of light tube, and there's obviously a light in there and a sensor. But let's see how far I can take this thing apart and see what's inside it. So let's have these 3 screws out and see how far into the PCB this corrosion has gone, and whether it's completely killed this unit. Right, that's got the screws out, so now I'm just taking the front apart. Oh, that's quite nice. Oh, that's interesting. Those connectors, well, those clip into these PCB clips, which is pretty neat, actually. Okay, so the circuit board looks in reasonable condition. Let's get in a bit closer on that. Right, it seems this transparent plastic thing is actually a double lens, which focuses presumably the light from the photo, the LED, and then also the image onto the photodiode through these double lenses. That piece sits on there, and that's what gives the this sort of elongated window at the bottom, and then these 2 devices sit behind there. So that's all okay. Every time I move this thing, more and more of this corrosive stuff falls off it, so I'm going to have to sweep that away as I go. Now this thing seems to peel off. This has got the light pipes for the 2 indicators, plus the sort of rubberized carbon conductive buttons which touch these conductive pads, so I can take that off. Right, I think this is the most negative point here. This is covered in that corrosion, so whether that's still making a good contact with the PCB or not, I don't know. This looks like it's the most positive point, and then the positive of the first cell looks like it's got metalwork that kind of angles it across under this PCB to the second cell, and then there's probably angling going across because all these cells sit the same way round. So they've probably routed these across in angles. And so this is the most positive point here. So, I mean, I could certainly put 9 volts on this board and power it up. But let's just have a look at some of the components first, particularly this controller, which looks really interesting. Actually, I'll just take a look at this down here. It says Lego Group 1997. So if this product was released in 97, then they really moved quickly from putting the date on this board to releasing the product. So not entirely sure about how those dates work, but 1997 there. Now on this chip we've got 9715, so that's presumably the date. We've got 0997 on that chip, so it looks like 97 is appearing here, there and everywhere. But this main controller chip is very interesting. This is a Zilog, who of course invented the Z80. Now what is it? Is it a 71746? That looks like it. Let's try and look that one up. Well, interestingly, I can find very little information on this 71746. I mean, I could see a couple of references to it from sellers who call it a SOP28. So that looks like it's probably 28 pins, small outline package. It's clearly a Zilog. Well, I think it's a Z8 series microcontroller, but no, I can't find much on that at all. I mean, maybe I'll have to start looking through the Zilog Z8 documentation, but let's have a look at a few other parts. We've got an LM293 there. Is that a op-amp or comparator or something like that? There's an odd thing here. It's this, whoops, it's this LX, now what would it be? A 7774? Is that actually perhaps something like a 7474 flip-flops or something like that? Maybe, not sure, might have to look that one up. There's an HCT04 here. That's just a set of inverters, HC04, 7404 that is. And there's a little 8-pin device here. Can't quite see that one at the moment. Okay, yeah, that one's an LM358, so I'm pretty sure that's an op-amp. It looks like the carbonizing process that they've used to create these switch pads, they've also used it to create these jumper links, because they look like they're made of the same material. So they've got these links that jump across. I presume they're essentially 0 ohms. There are 3 there, but they've also used them for these switch pads. So that's quite interesting. I've seen these things before on, well, I think I've seen them myself once before, and I've certainly seen them on other videos, but I've never realized that they've also used the same technique to create these switch pads. So that's quite interesting. Now I'm just wondering if I spend a little bit of time filing the metal on the little hump there. There's just a little hump that goes over the top there. So if I put a file on there at that angle and then tip it to that angle, I could perhaps just clear the tops of these springy terminals. This end seems to have fared pretty well. None of these are corroded. None of these is corroded, I suppose I should say. So let me just try filing these, because I think it's the only hope of getting this thing working again, short of putting crop clips on these connection points. But that, I think, would be difficult, because then it's not going to enable me to put the cover back on and have the switches and have the lens arrangement for the barcode scanner reader thing. So I'm just going to have a little go at filing those contacts. Yeah, this is so stupid. I'm kicking myself really for leaving these batteries in for so many years. If only I'd taken them out when I last used the set, there'd be none of these problems. Wow, this is proving really difficult to see any metal under here at all. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm just wondering actually whether one possible way of removing corrosion by an alkaline is to perhaps use an acid. So I've got some of this descaler, which is an acid. I'm not quite sure what acid, but I just wondered whether I might dip a bit of that on that connector there. Oh yeah, look, that's foaming up nicely. So definitely the acid is reacting with the alkali, but is that going to work? Well, certainly the acid has eaten away a lot of the alkali deposit, so that certainly seems to work to remove that deposit. I've applied it several times. Then you have to wash it, so I've washed it in water under the tap. Of course, I'm going to have to dry it now. Now, as luck would have it, the sun's come out, so it's kind of sunning on here and possibly drying this out a bit. So yes, I've managed to remove most of the alkali corrosion with the acid and then washed it. Of course, acid probably doesn't do these contacts any good either, but I have scraped them with the file. They do appear to be copper under something, but that something's long since been corroded away. So I think what I'll do now is I've got lots of these batteries, so I've got a set of 6 here. I think I'll put those 6 in and just see if the thing powers up. Right, I've lowered the blind because I can't work in full sun. It's just not possible to see what I'm doing. But this has dried out a little bit. Let's just put these in and see if it boots. See if that microcontroller or microprocessor powers up and whether we get anything. I can't remember how to turn it on. Right, well that's interesting. If I press play, I'm getting a little beep from there, and if I press record, this red light's coming on, but so is the photo emitter, the red LED, which would be for the barcode scanning. So I need to put the lens arrangement back, but yeah, certainly that seems to be making contact, and I can switch on and off that LED. So yeah, I think it's working. So I've reassembled the switch membrane there, also the lens and the underside of that black barcode reader thing. Now I've got to put this down over the top of all this. Now the connections for these brick connectors have to align with the connections, but that seems to have gone on all right. So the barcode reader's there. How do you switch it on? Oh no, I've only got 3 of the batteries in because I need to put these screws in now. And that's all back together. Beeps when you press those 2 buttons. Oh, play works and that lit up briefly. Oh yeah, the green light. And record works and the red light comes on, and so does the barcode reading LED. So let's quickly read the manual and work out how to scan the barcodes and get the motor to do something. Right, it looks like there are some sound effects here for a truck, a helicopter, an Android by the look of it. So I'm just wondering if I can record some of these barcodes and get it to make sound effects. So let's try the truck. Record. Oh, wow! Let's try the helicopter. The Android. The gears. Oh, is it still reading? Yeah, it sounds like an 80s, I don't know, slot machine or something. What's this? Wire or something. And this one. Oh, that's just a beep, perhaps. Oh no, that's a speaker with a line through it, so that presumably mutes the sound. Interesting. Let's try some motor controls. Now, for some reason, it won't turn this motor, and I'm not quite sure why, so I'm thinking of just shoving 9 volts on there and seeing whether this motor is actually still working. So let's get my solar 12 volts. That's set to 10 volts, that'll do. So let's switch that on and touch that onto these contacts and see whether this motor in fact turns. Right, well, it's clicking and drawing a current. The power supply is going into constant current. So is there, what did I set the current for? 0 amps, that's a bit strange. No. I'll have a look at this. Right, so the next problem is that the motor seems to have seized up. When I program this thing to do motor movements, it's not doing them. So I've got my power supply here. That's set to, what's that, half an amp at 10 volts. That should get the motor going, but it doesn't when I touch these contacts onto the motor contacts, which are on the corners of these pins. I'm just getting a clicking. This thing's going into current limit, so it's drawing half an amp, but the motor's not actually turning. So I'm just wondering if I can put this wheel on there and attach power and kind of coax it to run. I can't do that with the camera running, I think. So this is what's in the back of the motor. It looks like that's the commutator, that sort of split shaft thing. Let's bring that a bit nearer, with some very fine sort of fingers that seem to be laying onto it from the left hand side there, and also from the top. It's a strange arrangement, but that's seized solid. That component there, I would imagine, is a capacitor. So all I can assume is that the lubricant that's inside here has gone hard and this thing's just seized completely. I could try and coax it with more current and voltage, but there's a limit to how far you can go with that, isn't there? Well, let's just try 12 volts, half an amp. So I just touch these contacts and I'm getting that clicking, and you'll probably see my power supply is going into current limit, but that's just not turning, and I don't quite understand why. These things don't last forever, do they? So the problem is, without the motor being able to run, all I can do is do the sound effects, which is a bit rubbish. However, I can do the sensor, so I can scan this thing that says when the sensor button is pressed in, do this response. So let's press record and say sensor button, play the lorry track and play it quickly, and play it for, I don't know, 2 seconds. So I think that's done it. I press play and I think now it's waiting for the sensor. So I've got the sensor connected to this wire that goes on the yellow thing. So when you press the sensor button, Oh, I don't think it doesn't seem to have recognised the 2 seconds thing. So let's try again. Sensor down here. Lorry for 2 seconds. Medium speed. Let's try that. So it waits for the sensor. Press the sensor. Oh yes, and it played for 2 seconds. Let's stop and play. Press the sensor, and it plays that sound for 2 seconds. It's a real shame I can't use the motor rotate commands, but the motor's knackered. Oh, look what I found on the back of the barcode scanning sheet. It's a piano with some notes. So let's press the record button and scan over some of these notes. Yeah, so you can play basic scales of music on this thing. Why? And of course, having recorded that, I can play it back, which is fun. So I could do a little tune. And play that back. So that's great. So it seems that actually leaving the batteries in this thing didn't totally destroy it, but leaving this motor unused for about 17 years or something like that did, which is a real shame. So I think all I can do with this motor, I think what I'll do is actually put it on the radiator when we next use the central heating and just warm it up and hope that that sort of releases, if it is the lubricant that's gone solid, maybe warming it up would release that. I mean, you can hear the gearbox clicking. You can hear movement in the gearbox, but the motor part is just completely seized, and I've applied quite a bit of pressure to that both ways, and it's just not having it. So seized. So that's the Lego Technic Set 8479 Barcode Code Pilot truck, which unfortunately now is useless. Not because I left the batteries in and totally corroded all the terminals, but because the motor's seized up. What a pain. Cheerio.